For those of you who have joined us for tonight for the Tam Junction Placemaking Study, we are giving people a few minutes before we start the meeting. Shall we begin?
Sounds good to me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Moulton Peters, your county supervisor in Southern Marin, and welcome to Tam Valley neighbors and friends. Thank you for joining us again for a first time for our Tam Junction Placemaking Study community meeting, where we're going to ask for your input and thoughts as we develop a request for proposal for the study on Tam Junction. And our senior staff member and planner, Kristen Drum, in just a moment will tell you more about what we're going to be doing tonight and introduce the rest of our team. But I want to just thank everyone for joining us. Community participation is a big part of the planning process that we'll be using to look at what can we do to improve safety for all users along Tam Junction, as well as economic vitality and neighborhood connection and friendliness in the area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen. And again, thank you and welcome everyone.
So good evening, everyone. I'm going to take a minute to share my screen. So please bear with me. Okay. I hope everyone can see that, and good evening, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to learn about the Tam Junction Placemaking Study. Tonight's presentation focuses on introducing the study. This is the third meeting and presentation we have given to introduce the study. The first two meetings occurred back in April at the Tamalpais Design Review Board meeting, which was on April 1st, and at the Tamalpais Community Services District meeting, which was on April 15th. Just to let you know, the content of tonight's presentation is the same content that we shared at the previous meetings. And also, this meeting will be recorded and posted online on the project website. Okay. Okay, as I said earlier, the meeting will be recorded and we will post it online. Second, please hold your questions until we finish the presentation. Once the presentation is finished, we will open up the meeting for your questions or comments. If you do have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand to signal that you wish to speak. The moderator will call out your name in the queue. And when your name is called, please unmute yourself. When you are done speaking, lower your hand by clicking the lower hand in the meeting controls and mute your microphone. And I just wanted to say that the chat, please do not use the chat. We will not pay attention to that feature. So, I'd like to introduce the project team. I am Kristen Drum. I'm with the Community Development Agency. Here tonight with me is Sahar Shirazi. She's a principal transportation planner with the Department of Public Works, and also is Joshua Pertain, a planner with me in the Community Development Agency. Once I will be sharing the presentation with Sahar. Once I conclude, I will pass it off to Sahar, so please be aware of that. So there are two things I would like to mention with this slide. First is the meeting objective, and also is the study objectives. What are we trying to accomplish here? We are here tonight to introduce the Tam Junction Placemaking Study. We want to make sure we hear from residents and businesses owners before scoping the work, to make sure that we hear from everyone, to make sure that the study reflects findings to ensure that future plans support a thriving and vibrant and sustainable community. Once we gather the feedback from the community and know what is most essential for this project to cover, we will be able to draft a thoughtful and thorough request for proposal that we can publicize to qualified consultants. We will use the feedback from these meetings, in addition to this webinar and the online survey, to guide the RFP scope of work. As for the objective of the study itself, we are aware that there are many issues with the Tam Junction area. The study will look at various community priorities around such issues as circulation. And we know that circulation is an issue not only at the local level, but it's regional as well. We will also look at safety, community vitality, and also resiliency. We know that there are also a variety of projects happening in the area that are being done by different agencies. And objective of the study, it will take a comprehensive look at what has been done and also what is happening to develop strategies that integrate a unified and coordinated approach to guide future planning and policy decisions. So Sahar, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Kristen. And I'll just jump in to just talk about what we're going to go through this evening. So we've already done our introductions, but we're going to spend some time talking about the project background. We'll also give a high-level overview of what we've heard so far from the request for proposals scope for work, what we've heard in our last few meetings. We'll talk a little bit about what we mean by placemaking. We have a few slides to sort of explain that concept. We'll show you the study area itself, and then we'll dig into the scope of work, which, as Kristen mentioned, has not yet been developed. This is a little bit of a different process where we're coming to the community to get input before the scope is really set. And so really we want to make sure that we're capturing your needs, your ideas for Tam Junction, and that the consultant that's hired is the right consultant to do the study for this community, that it's a good fit. And that's why we'll also be asking about consultant qualities. Finally, we'll go over the project schedule. We'll talk a little bit about next steps, and then we'll open it up for questions from you all. So with that, as Krista mentioned, we've held a few meetings. We've heard from some folks via our email that's available via the website, and we'll share at the end of this presentation as well. And we've heard a lot of different comments. For a full list of comments, you can go to our website and you'll see all of our public comments in more detail. But essentially, there is a big concern, a lot of concern around safety. Not the only concern, but a big one, along Shoreline Highway, which is already constrained, already congested. There aren't great bicycle and pedestrian facilities, so it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel accessible. There's flooding and drainage issues along the entire corridor. There's barriers and gaps for ADA accessibility and in general access. There's questions around parking need and parking demand and potential opportunities for parking management. Similarly, all of these things cause problems for emergency access, both ingress and egress. And then we've heard a lot about the aesthetics as well, the signage, the visual clutter, and thinking about how to bring that together a bit more. So now what do we mean by placemaking? Hopefully some of you are familiar with this concept. We will be sharing the link for the website at the end of the presentation, so don't worry. Um, but placemaking is really about creating a sense of place in the spaces that we inhabit, we go to, and we go through. We recognize that Tam Junction is essential not just for the local area, but for the region. It serves a lot of different roles for a lot of different people, and we want to make sure that it has that identity, that sense of space. And that's really what placemaking is. It can be as simple as something like creating gathering spaces or opportunities for folks to gather, or it can be broad and big, like creating new activities or identities within a community. The point is, it's holistic. It brings together all of the different components, and it's a community-driven process. It examines and leverages community assets and resources, including concerns, needs, and opportunities, to create a vibrant community through different opportunities such as community hubs, community identity. And it's a very collaborative process. And that's why, again, we're starting this process early with you, with the community, and we really want to make sure that we're addressing your needs and wants as well. We also know that this is a complicated area. There are multiple layers of government, not just in Marin, but really specifically in this geography as well, that can result in some redundancies, inefficiencies, slow decision-making processes. There's complex and detailed layers of chains of command, as well as interjurisdictional coordination that's going to be needed, not just across city, county, but across all of these different entities that play in this very important space. Um, so Caltrans, we know, for example, is a very important partner in this work, but really looking at these triangles in the middle, this is not an exhaustive list, but really meant to demonstrate that in addition to, the triangle of federal, state, county, and local regulations, requirements, and needs, there are a lot of other agencies and special districts that are present in the area that are separate from the county and local government that do provide specialized services. You'll see some of those on this list on the right. And then we also have layers of planning and regulatory documents we're going to talk a little bit more about that both govern what the community can and cannot do and have been made in various ways with community input. And so we want to understand and respect all of that and understand how this all feeds into our process. This is not easy or quick, but we're very excited about making all of these things come together in a way that really feeds the community's wants and needs. Sorry, next slide. So here is our study area. For anyone who was in the previous meetings, you'll notice that there's been some shifts in this area, both in terms of the location, the boundaries, that includes Tam Junction, Manzanita, the shoreline commercial areas, as well as Almonte Boulevard, from the intersection with Shoreline Highway eastward to Miller Avenue and the Mill Valley city limits. This was based on some feedback, some early feedback we received in earlier meetings, and again through those correspondence, and some discussion around, again, that sort of not just local but regional impact. You'll also notice that the study area is now dashed where it was solid. This really wants to acknowledge that while the focus of the study is on this specific area that we're showing within that boundary, we understand that this study has impacts to the larger Tam Valley community as well as the region. And so we will be looking at that interaction, even though our focus is in this particular location. We also, as I mentioned, acknowledge and understand that there's been a lot of processes, a lot of documents, a lot of work that's already gone into this community, including the Tam Area Community Plan. Originally made in 1973 and in place since then. It was updated in 1992. It is a long-standing and well-respected document. It has certain goals in the plan that have been kept through time with the community. And this study is not looking to specifically update that community plan, but as we talk through some of the opportunities and the wants and the needs of the region, we will likely include in this study potential short-term, mid-term, and long-term strategies that may create changes in future phases in order to implement some of the things that are wanted through this study. That said, again, we are starting with that as our platform and our understanding of where the region is. We also know that there's a lot going on in this area. Some of it with us, some of it with our partners. This is again not meant to be an exhaustive list, but to highlight that there's been a lot of work in this area. There's been a lot of projects that have occurred. There are projects that are currently in progress, and there are projects that are planned or potential for the future. Uh, we want to make sure that all of those improvements and projects have maintained the goals of the community plan, or sorry, that the past projects have maintained the goals of the community plan. And this study will look at this more holistically to understand what else needs to be done in the area, including understanding what has been done and what is planned. So if you look through this list, again, not exhaustive, but it does include some of the work that is happening, especially through Caltrans, but also through us, through our Parks Department. There's a lot of examinations that are currently in progress. The Coyote Creek Bridge, we know that that's a major issue in the region, but something that is being worked on, and we've had a lot of communication around. There's also a lot of work being done on sea level rise and adaptation planning, and then some future potential development based on our housing element. And again, that's just a small snapshot, but recognizing that there's a lot to work with. So we again are here today to hear your ideas. We want to hear from you on the scope of work that we're in the process of creating for this study. We also want to hear from you on the skills and qualities that may be needed for the consultant in this study. We have not yet developed the scope of work. Your feedback is going to be really essential in guiding its development. So, what we have so far from what we've heard is the elements for the scope to address include safety. Again, these are broad categories that include transportation safety. It includes environmental safety. It includes safety around, public safety in general. Resiliency includes things like land use opportunities, potential open space, potential impacts from climate events. Circulation is something we've heard quite a bit about, especially with the combination of jurisdictions that are in that region. And circulation really is referring to both mobility and access within the region. And that's not just for cars, it's for all modes of transit or travel. So people walking, people biking, people rolling, people driving, and people in transit. How are we making sure that folks are able to get in and around to where they need to go in the region? Accessibility is something we've heard a lot about, especially given the conditions in the region, as well as the current status of certain things like the bridge. And then community and economic vitality, again, another place where we feel that the land use and zoning portions are embedded. Because when we talk about community and economic vitality, we're really talking about the mix of opportunities that are in the region for both employers, employees, recreation, retail, and general activity within the region, making sure that there is a foundational base of activity and vitality for the Tam Junction area. Will include obviously looking at what the mix of uses in that area is, what opportunities there are, what kinds of things are available, and how we might want to think about that with the community. And then finally, as I mentioned, the skill set of the consultants themselves. We are looking at a multidisciplinary team, recognizing the multidisciplinary nature of this project. And so we really want to hear from you on what the important components of the consultants themselves, not necessarily their areas of expertise, but what they need to bring to the table to make this work for this region. So on safety, we want to think about what types of safety concerns this RFP should consider, and I'll just give you all some briefings on some of the things that we've heard so far at a high level. Really hearing a lot about the gaps in the bike ped network, and how that puts pedestrians and bicyclists in the travel lane with cars in an area that doesn't feel safe. Similarly, for children to walk or bike to school. We know that the flooding can block the roadway infrastructure, which is a major concern, especially in the event of an emergency evacuation need, and the challenges that they may be presented through that. And then again, on the availability of infrastructure for pedestrians, in particular, sidewalks, crosswalks, things of that nature. On resiliency. thinking about what types of resiliency concerns the RFP should consider. No surprise, we've heard a lot about flooding and sea level rise challenges, which are very present and important in this area. That we've heard that the existing roadway infrastructure is outdated and could benefit from some upgrades. Traffic congestion is something that we hear quite a bit about. Better overall circulation, and again, better pathways for cyclists and pedestrians so we can avoid the vehicles, bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit to create more multimodal options and improve environmental outcomes and some flexibility for the system. In terms of circulation, this is one we've heard quite a bit about. As I mentioned, we're sort of including the bucket of mobility and access to different destinations within the circulation bucket. And so we've heard a lot about the existing roadway being auto-oriented and currently at capacity, which again is important not just for the area shoreline highway itself, but it is also the major traffic corridor for the local neighborhoods and a gateway to Marin's coast, recreational areas. And so you have a combination of folks coming in from Marin, from the region, and then also tourism going through the region. The congestion and traffic signals causing long backups, longer travel times, making parking difficult, better transit access, and electric vehicle chargers, some of the things that we've heard around circulation, in addition to the bicycle and pedestrian concerns that we've mentioned before. Accessibility has come up quite a bit as well, which it makes sense when there's a lot of comments about circulation and bike ped access as well. The closure of the wooden bridge over Coyote Creek has been raised quite a few times as an issue, creating a longer detour to cross Shoreline Avenue. Just as a side note, we are currently working with Caltrans to create a mid-block crossing that was noted on one of the former slides in order to make that detour smaller while the bridge is being worked on. That will still take a while, but we recognize that as an issue. Utility poles, street furniture, things in the roadway that are causing obstacles and barriers in the path of travel. And then again, the lack of sidewalks creating a lot of barriers for accessibility. Finally, the community and economic vitality piece. Again, this is really thinking about what the assets in the community are and could be, and how to ensure that there is a thriving community, a foundation for a thriving community. And so what we've heard so far here is really that the mix of businesses that are available should be resident serving, that parking management is an important piece of that community and economic vitality. And we love to hear these things connected because part of the goal of this study is to think about everything more holistically. That the study should look at underutilized lots, clarify what the overall development potential is, and what the cumulative impacts would look like in this region. And that the study should look at creative ways to address empty business and storefronts in the region as well. So those are the scope elements. And we also want to hear from you on the consultants themselves. We can't have everyone on the selection panel. And so really this is our opportunity to hear from the community on what is really needed in the consultant skill set, the qualities, the abilities of the consultant team themselves. We are looking again to hire a multidisciplinary team, recognizing one, that this is a holistic process. It's looking at a lot of different elements, some that we've just mentioned, but two, that there's different pieces of expertise that are going to be needed to make this really work in a collaborative fashion, especially with the community. And so what we've heard so far with this thinking is that the consultant should have an extensive background in transportation planning, engineering, and design, and they should have a deep understanding of Caltrans and Caltrans's culture and how the agency operates. We've also heard that the consultant team should have a deep background in community engagement, in real community engagement and understanding, as well as a diverse range of design and planning experience so that they can address the unique needs of this project and keep the aesthetics front and center. And then expertise in economic development, economic vitality so that they can really understand the market conditions, analyze them alongside the local economic trends, so that as we get into that community economic vitality piece, we're really understanding the impacts and the potential of what recommendations pop up. This will not be your last bite at the apple. As mentioned, we've held a few of these meetings. We also will have we do have a survey online that we'll discuss at the end of this presentation. We have an email where you're welcome to send us thoughts and ideas at any time. But as the project actually starts, once we have selected a consultant, once we have started the process, in addition to the community engagement that'll be done more widely through a variety of means, we don't know what they are yet, but they could be, big meetings, pop-ups, focus groups, lots of actual engagement in the community. We also want to have a community advisory group that is really representative and inclusive for the area, and that will be initiated by the consultant when they come on. The role of the advisory group will really be to advise the planning staff to represent the diversity and the perspectives of the community. And that'll be done through attending regular meetings and participating throughout this process more deeply than through the general community engagement. Again, this process will begin when the consultant is hired. We are not starting this process until then, but just want to share this information with you because it'll be an important part of ensuring collaboration. We're also in the process of identifying partners, stakeholders that will be important in this area to have conversations throughout the process as we dive into this and bring the consultant on. Again, not an exhaustive list. However, we are trying to grow this list. And so we are keeping track of all your suggestions. Anything you've stated previously or have sent in, we do have a record of. So please keep adding. We really appreciate your input and insight. And our schedule. If you had looked at our website or attended a previous meeting, you may have seen a different schedule. It was a little more aggressive. And in recognition of the need to really make this a community-driven process, ensure that we're hearing from folks that are going to be touched by this project throughout, we have slowed this process down in order to get this early input and make sure that our scope and our consultant are the right folks and the right scope to make this project successful and make it work for the community. So this is a high-level summary. We have key milestones listed on here, key meetings, key events. You'll see, again, there's ongoing community engagement throughout this process. We are drafting the RFP now with this input, with our previous input, as I've mentioned through the survey, and are aiming to take it to the Board of Supervisors for pre-approval to go out in November. That will allow us to release the RFP later this fall or early this winter, and then go through the process of creating the contract and have a consultant on by early spring. I should note there's a long pause in between those things, but part of that, we won't be stopping working. We'll continue on this project. We'll continue having early meetings, discussions, coordination efforts, as we're currently doing with places like Caltrans and the Sea Level Rise team and others, just so that we can keep the momentum going and build that trust and relationships that are needed to make this project really successful. And with that, I will pass it back over to Kristen.
Thank you, Sahar. As mentioned, we are conducting a survey right now. The survey is posted on the website, and it closes on Friday on the 24th at noon. Please share with your friends and neighbors, and for those who were not able to attend tonight's meeting or our previous meetings, you still have plenty of time to fill it out. Once the survey closes, we're going to take the information that we've compiled from today's meeting and the survey, and we were going to take them and post them online. Hopefully we'll have that done by early next week. Once uh, so the board has to give us authorization to move forward with the RFP. We plan, the schedule is tentatively for November 10th to bring that to the board to get their authorization to move forward. To get notified for this, please subscribe to our email list, which is on the website, and you will be aware of this event and other events in the future. And we are also using social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Nextdoor to, so there are several options to stay involved and aware of what's going on. Once we get the board authorization, as Sahar mentioned, there will be a gap as we initiate the process to select and hire the consultant. That will occur in the fall and fall 2026 and into the winter 2027. And then we anticipate the study will begin once the consultant is on board in the spring of 2027. And again, the online survey is available now. Follow the link to the webpage where you can fill it out. And then, so now we'd like to open up the meeting to any of your questions or comments. So please raise your hand. I can't see that. So Julie, please call them out if you see anybody.
Okay, I do see we have a couple questions, a couple hands raised. So I will start with John Bila, and you are now unmuted.
Thank you for a great presentation, John Bella, Fairfax resident. Although I certainly spend a lot of time in Tam Junction, just it's a major commercial center, and I'm also a cyclist, and it seems like a pretty thorough kind of scope of work. A couple things just wanted to maybe emphasize further, if possible, which is the economic development and implementation side. So there's a lot of planning work's been done. Can this plan really be a vehicle to catalyze the kind of short-term, midterm improvements that you described? And if so, that would require a consultant that does thoughtful economic development in connection to placemaking efforts. So that's one thought in terms of the consultant skill set. The other is on the more front end of the planning and engagement effort is, one of the components of good placemaking is often some type of data collection about how are people using the space today. And so if there's a consultant group out there that is familiar with, public life study or observational analysis or some of the tools that are used today to really capture the existing social infrastructure assets in the area and how those might inform thinking about where do we want to make investments that are going to, create more support spaces for community. So yeah, two comments there, and thanks for an overall great presentation.
Thank you.
Julie? Oh, thank
Okay,
you, John.
yes. Okay, so our next question will be from Stephen Levine, and you are now unmuted.
I think Stephen is still muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I'm curious to know how you intend to identify qualified consultants prior to the interview process. And I would also, if possible, encourage you to look at, and we have a vast array of them, local architects, local landscape architects. If we could bring in some folks who really understand the community because they reside and work here, I think it might be beneficial to this study. I've also got a comment, if I might. I continue to look at that long list of participants, and it scares me to a degree. They say too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the broth. I just am am hoping that this study is not bogged down with so many areas and participants of input that it just drags it down to the point where it just doesn't happen. I'm concerned about the bureaucracy, and I'm concerned about the speed of the project with those many people you've identified involved in making decisions or giving you recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just a quick point of clarification. So we are looking for input onto the consultant skill set, which I appreciate that input. We are not choosing a consultant before the interviews. I don't know if that was the if we misunderstood that. I
No, if
apologize.
I might clarify, I'm asking how do you go about qualifying consultants that you might want to interview? I mean,
So
that's a task in itself.
yeah, so we will be putting out an RFP, and consultants are all welcome. We will be spreading it as far as we can, and consultants are welcome to apply for that RFP to bid on it. And we would welcome and love to have some locals involved in that process. So we'll ask you to spread the word when it's ready.
If I can comment on the second portion of your question, about how how there will be numerous, there's going to be there's a bureaucracy, a lot of comments to consider. We hope that as part of the study, it will look at the feasibility of some of what's being proposed, and that will come out when we look at the short, medium, and long-term um, goals or the projects for this. And so we hope that as part of that piece, we get the feasibility aspect.
Thank you for your responses.
Thank you. Who do we have next?
Thank you. Okay. So next we have Katie Smith. You can now unmute.
All right. Hello. Can you
Hi,
hear
we
me?
can hear you. Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Katie Smith. I'm a resident of Tam Junction, lived here over 20 years, so seen the area get more and more busy and have more issues. I think it's a complex area, as I'm sure you know. There's lots of different things in your presentation that need to be addressed, and I would urge you to start with the safety issues because I think everybody who lives here is very concerned that somebody's going to run across the highway and die. So you see people running across with kids, and so things like the safety issues around pedestrians, then maybe the emergency planning and traffic flow. Those would be the things I would urge you to start with, and maybe those are what you just mentioned in your short, medium, and long-term um, uh, project planning. The other comment that I have is around the skill set. We had, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but we had a consultant come and speak to people in Tam Valley a couple of years ago now, and he had a finance background. And it was very interesting and insightful to hear someone speak to the cost of some of these projects, especially around flooding, and how as a community we're going to have to rely on county resources, state resources, so Caltrans, federal funding, and then the residents of Tam Junction are going to have to kick in something. So I think having somebody who understands how the financing works, not just Caltrans, but federal funding potentially and other sources of funding would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Great. Next we have Bill Scott.
Hi, I'm uh, if you are driving down Shoreline Highway, particularly on the easterly side, there's a bunch of utilities that go through there. The electrical poles that are to the right of the street. I know there's a sewer line that has been an issue. The Dipsy Cafe, for example, ultimately closed because the owners were not complying with county sewerage limitations on putting grease down the sewers and the like. So I'm wondering what you know about the right of ways for the roadway and about utilities, particularly sewer and water, but I guess and electricity. But what other utilities are there? It's quite busy on the easterly side of the street there, and all those telephone poles create a distraction, and there just seems like there are people dodging in and out amongst the utilities to get into two very busy businesses at the junction and Hookfish, and then later on going the other way, getting into the mall and into Bob's Donuts. So I'd love to know more about utilities and the right of way, and I'm wondering if you can begin to populate the website with information about those. Surveys. Do you have any surveys about how those are laid out and the possibility of moving some of those utilities?
I'll jump in. Thank you, Bill. Great question and comment. As you may have seen on some of the slides, we've heard about the polls, both in terms of visual clutter, but also in terms of safety and accessibility issues. So things like surveys and even topos and working with the utilities and understanding where Caltrans is able to support, where PG&E is able to support, where the sewer lines need to move. The drainage issues are a big problem. Will be a part of this. We don't have that information yet. That'll be a part of the sort of analysis around what the major infrastructure issues are. I'm not sure about having current surveys of that area at the moment, to be honest with you, but we can look.
Will you ultimately populate the website with all that stuff?
I think we're not sure exactly what's going to go on the website at this point because we don't have the study, but any findings coming out of the study, we will be sharing publicly. Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Of course.
I anticipate the consultant, once they're hired, will conduct an existing conditions review as part of the study, and that material will be shared with the public when it's presented, and it will get posted on the website. But again, remember, that's not starting until next April.
Okay, so our next question or comment is going to be from Sharon Nakatani.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi. Well, first of all, thanks for putting this on. I'm a resident right off of Rosemont, so off of El Monte. So I deal daily both walking and driving with kind of the craziness of that whole intersection. But when you described what you're looking for the consultant, you're describing quite a lot, and it sounds quite ambitious. Someone who's an expert in traffic, economic vitality, environmental factors and everything. So I'm wondering if the selecting committee will prioritize what the community has already put forward, these major issues, and if you're going to prioritize them when you're looking at consultants, because I'm just, I don't know. I don't know all these consultants, but maybe they do exist where they have such a deep breadth of all sorts of aspects of this. But if they don't, I'm wondering if you're going to prioritize it yourself. And if so, I would concur with the previous speaker, and I would say safety is kind of a top of mind always whenever I'm driving through there or walking through there.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate that. And I will say, I think safety in all of the different categories we mentioned has been something that's been brought up in every meeting as a concern. So we definitely know that's a huge high priority. I will just note, I think what we meant by a multidisciplinary team is we're really looking for a team of consultants. To your point, there's If there is a unicorn consultant that has all of those in one firm, I've never worked with them or met them. Maybe they exist. We'll see. But usually it would be a combination of teams coming together to form one team to hit all of the things that we put in the RFP.
Understood.
And
Thank you.
and to your second question, the RFP is meant to reflect these priorities entirely. That is the goal of these meetings, is to ensure that we are prioritizing alongside what the community's needs and wants are.
Thank you.
Next we have Larry Backgate.
Hello. I just have a couple questions about what seems to have already been included in the design. That one thing is the mid-block crossing there between the junction and the bridge. Is that going to be permanent, or just until they repair that bridge on the east side, the wooden bridge on the east side of Coyote, of the highway bridge? And the other question is, why are they widening the Coyote Creek roadway bridge when I drive over there? It doesn't seem to be narrow or anything. It seems to be perfectly adequate. I mean, of course, if you have pedestrians walking, that would be a concern. But the pedestrians and bicyclists are going to be walking across. There's a bridge on the west side and the bridge on the east side, which needs repair. So I understand after that bridge on the east side is repaired or reconstructed, then there won't be need for widening the road. The bicyclists and the pedestrians should not be utilizing the roadway at that point. In fact, I noticed there are a lot of bicyclists that use the roadway east of the bridge, or southeast of the bridge, I would say, and there's a bicycle pathway that goes, all the way from Marin Avenue to the multi-use pathway that connects Sausalito and Mill Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I can jump in on a couple of those things. So on the mid-block crossing, again, it's still a process that we are working with Caltrans on, so it will still take a little bit of time for that to be implemented. But once it is implemented, at this point, there's no plan to remove it, even when the bridge is fixed. But through this study and through our coordination with Caltrans, there's possible changes in the roadway that may come out of this as recommendations and future projects with Caltrans. So I can't guarantee that crosswalk will be in that location forever, but we don't have plans to move it once it's input at this point. In terms of the bridge widening, that is a Caltrans bridge, and I should really clarify that they are not widening the bridge itself. They are widening the bridge by adding larger guardrails. And that's just an updated standard that is happening across different Caltrans infrastructure. And
Okay.
so it's not going to be adding to the actual length of the road there
Yeah.
at all. But that is a Caltrans project. The Coyote Creek Bridge project, we're looking at what's possible in terms of replacement or rebuilding. And in the meantime, we're working with Caltrans on the mid-block crossing.
Okay. About the mid pedestrian crossing, I would, if that mid-block pedestrian crossing, the traffic is bad enough there now. That's going to even make it worse. I mean, it's so much traffic. Ever since they made that pedestrian crossing at the junction to be all-way pedestrians and the whole intersection is closed to cars, that's caused tremendous traffic backups.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on some of the things that this study's going to need to examine, Larry, is really that intersection of different types of modes and movement throughout the area and the trade-offs that we're going to need to consider between things like safety, access, accessibility, congestion, etc. And so that will be a part of the study. So thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have Clayton Smith.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Um, First off, I've been here. I came to this area in 1969. So I've seen a lot of changes since I've come here. And my wife has had an office at 150 Shoreline Drive since 1978, almost 50 years, serving this community. And we've currently owned our house here for 40 years. So people have, I would say, a stake in the game here and a great deal of knowledge of the community. I would agree with Steve Levine. I think that you should first look to the community for people that you should choose to provide the consultancy on all these issues concerning that junction down there. Now, that said, one thing I've noticed is that almost all these meetings of this sort, you do not use the facility available to you to share all the participants that are also at the meeting. So we could actually see when we come to one of these meetings who in our community actually is paying attention to this and whether or not the number of people actually at the meeting reflects a real effort, a real outreach to the community, that there are a sufficient number of people actually who have any idea that anything of this sort is actually going on that's going to affect the community. That's a second thing. A third thing is I've also am suspicious that much of what's driving this is the bicycle coalition. And I understand that they have their interest involved. But the fact of the matter is we have a very, very complex traffic phenomena there, both from the point of view of meeting the needs of the people who live in the community, but also the fact that we serve in this community on that roadway there, the circulation that keeps the economy of much of West Marin alive, which is going out to the parks and particularly to Muir Woods and to the top of the mountain. And for some reason, Mill Valley has been able to somehow or another, the city of Mill Valley, to disguise the opportunities traffic might have to actually use Mill Valley itself to take up some of the traffic that is basically all being focused up that terrible little road, Highway 1. And we know for a fact, and I've been attending these meetings for over 20 years, that nothing is going to be done about widening that road. So the only focus here is on that intersection and perhaps to some extent on the roadway approaching it from the Coyote Creek Bridge. And I would suggest that creating more complexity in that roadway and at that intersection to accommodate the bike coalition is actually a disservice to the people who live in this community. I mean, we have something that we have who live here. We have all learned how to deal with what's going on there. And I have not seen any accidents. I would like to know if someone actually has any accident statistics for the junction, which seems to be now functioning. As difficult as it is functioning. And people seem to be acting properly in handling all the complexities down there. I know it's dangerous and it's difficult, but I've driven down through there for many, many years, and I have not seen any major traffic accidents. I've seen people have a lot of frustration, but I think from a safety point of view, the question would be if it isn't broke, don't fix it, because fixing it may create complications that you don't really, or someone not familiar with the issue would not be able to understand. And also from an economic vitality point of view, it is surprising how robust that broken down piece of roadway is, particularly on the side that runs along by the water. We have now ended up with a beer parlor and a pizza place, and we've got a, a very ugly but necessary construction yard there. And we have the surf shop down there, and we have the coffee shop down there. We have lots of things down there that seem to function. And they actually, I don't know what you would have in mind. I hope not to create another dysfunctional strip center or some Potemkin village of sterile looking retail shops. But I also have noticed recently that so many people come to this from the city over to the junction, park there, and wander around in the funkiness of that junction, which seems to allow people to feel they're actually a part of something that is actually natural. And so, as I say, it is a strange place and it is a funky place, but it is doing a lot of service for our community. And
Great. Thank you, Clayton. Thanks for all your comments and over the years, all the comments. I think we're going to move on to somebody else now. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Justin Belsey.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Clayton, for all of. I would love to talk to you at some point. I'm a Tam Valley resident as well, although I've only been here for 10 years. I was curious about the slide that you had about all of the studies that are currently in progress, and will that information be also incorporated on your website? And if not, is there a central location to look at all the studies that are happening currently and where we are with each study? And then if someone could speak to how this consultant will then incorporate that information. I think you guys touched on a little bit, but just speaking a little bit to more out what that could look like. Thanks.
In response to your question, no, we don't have those studies on our website. And the consultant will look at a number of studies to get background information in preparation to evaluate the existing conditions for the study. Whether or not they're going to be placed on our website, that may or may not occur. We will have to contact the agencies who are responsible for some of those and see if they're available. But we can certainly try and see if that's feasible. I won't make any promises.
The deck itself, though, that lists some of the studies, you should be able to see.
So you can just Google them.
Well, like Kristen said, though, they might not all be publicly ready for viewing, especially the stuff that's underway or in the future.
Yeah. But there's no like, hey, this one's in this phase of the study or status, and this one's complete. I know you have the like different buckets of, you did have like past, present, future, I think.
But the
But good to
depth.
know. Yeah, good to know. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole looking for this if it's not there. But I will, yeah, I'll do a little bit of digging on my own. I do think it's like I do think it would be helpful to see that. Like I'm personally very curious about like what the results are of these studies, and if it is available, would love to read it and share it with my neighbors, just to kind of understand like where we are today.
Absolutely. And I think that as Kristen mentioned, one of the early tasks in this project, once we have a consultant on board, will be reviewing some of those documents, noting where they are, and building that sort of baseline foundation through the existing conditions report. And that once that is ready, we will be sharing that in the interim. But we have the list of some of the studies, but we don't have all of the details on all of them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so then next we have Ariana Hiscott.
Hey there, how's it going?
Great, thank you.
Good, good. So I actually do care a lot about the pedestrian crossing right at that town junction, specifically from Route 1, turning right onto Shoreline Highway. Despite what has said before, I feel like we do actually take our life in our hands trying to use that crosswalk because the cars turning right are always trying to sneak into traffic. When they see that there's a break in the cars and they just immediately go right. They don't look at the pedestrian crossings and see that they're on and that people are going to try and walk. So I have contacted Caltrans before about this issue. Now I'm wondering because there's so much coordination happening with this whole comprehensive project, does that also mean that Caltrans won't do anything like to improve that crossing at all until this is done? Or do you even know anything about
Those
how that would work, coordinate?
Yeah, just a note on that. We're not halting any Caltrans work at this point. We're not impacting any Caltrans ongoing work. We are beginning conversations with Caltrans over the last few weeks and months as this project has gotten to this phase,
Yeah.
so that we can make sure as we launch, we're coordinated as much as possible, recognizing that they are very essential partners in this process. But there's no plan, and there has not been any push to have them stop doing anything, not work on anything in the area, nothing of that. Their process will continue forward.
Continue. Okay, great. Yeah, because I really want them to just at least put a yield to pedestrian sign because that's just so dangerous. But anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
don't know
it.
if that's happening, to be clear. I'm just if it is, we're not stopping it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I just want Caltrans to not like drag their feet because they see this as opportunity to be like, well, we don't need to do anything until people actually say what's needed there because we know there's a need, a specific need already right there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Stephen Levine.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello? I
Yes.
just have one final comment from my perspective, and I think the direction you're taking is excellent. But let's face it, these roads in and around Tam Junction are owned and controlled by Caltrans. And none of what we're talking about and no study that we potentially perform can be implemented without the active participation and buy-in of Caltrans. I think that has to go to the top of the list of people who are involved immediately in this project. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We agree. That's, as I mentioned, why we've started conversations with them, made them aware of this project, where we are in the process, and hoping to have them on from launch. So thank you.
Can we get a senior manager or executive from Caltrans involved in this project rather than dealing with the folks who are doing the local fixes, if you will? And there's plenty of them, I agree, but this is a much larger issue than that.
Thank you. Do we have any other either hands or questions? I think we've actually answered the two questions that were in the Q&A as well.
Okay, we have Phil Rossington.
Hi. I know this is likely to raise some hackles, but housing is so needed everywhere, as we all know. And is there any sort of housing element that's going to be part of this study? I mean, is that going to be part of the overall scope that whomever is selected will look at and include?
As far as a housing element process, it is a distinct process that happened. It closed. I mean, there are some housing element sites that are proposed in the study area. Those sites have already approved. And whether or not in the next housing element cycle is not until 2030-ish. So whether we're not going to be taking a look at the housing element, those features as part of this study. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
Larry Backgate.
Oh, hello. Surprise. Somebody brought up a couple of questions ago about the yield sign for the right turns from Almonte, and also for the right turns from Highway 1 when you try and continue on Highway 1. I would suggest, I don't know, maybe I'll put this in the somewhere, but a flashing yellow lights for right turns at that intersection. That would really be helpful for people that are turning right, so that, and maybe, as the other speaker said, yield to pedestrians. That would help a lot, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other hands? And we do not have any questions, although I did see a few in the chat.
We
Ite,
have
you
one
raise your
hand up.
hand.
Okay. Ite Friedman.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, wonderful. So, first of all, thank you, Christine, Zahar, and the Project team. Welcome to Joshua. I also want to thank and acknowledge Supervisor Moulton Peters in her office for bringing this study forward, with staff support, of course, to this point. I have one question in the spirit of contribution. So the presentation lays out a thoughtful phase two process, which will lead to consultant selection in the spring of 27. With a study building from the Tamalpais Community Plan and the Marin County wide plan, what I'd love to hear is more about how the team is thinking about the bridge between the study's eventual recommendations and how those recommendations actually get implemented. So, for example, whether that runs through zoning updates, objective design, development standards for the housing element side, capital improvement programs relating to Caltrans work, or other pathways. So I ask this because I believe a successful placemaking study, one that stays true to the community plan that it builds from, should produce recommendations that can eventually be implemented and funded, rather than remain on a conceptual level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ite, for that comment. You're correct. The study will only provide recommendations, short, medium, long term. And it will be up to the Board of Supervisors at some later date to look at the recommendations and seek funding, or if there's funding available, to make sure that those projects happen and to schedule them accordingly. So there will be a lot of process involved in that part of implementation.
Got it. Okay.
I think
Understood. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add, I think some of the things that you noted could also be, those could be methods moving forward, but I also think that there might be opportunities that we identify through this process for short-term or quick wins. Especially if we're looking in the transportation space, for example, there may be some opportunities for quick builds, for things that create pop-up placemaking opportunities so that we can understand the options and the potential benefits better. Those will all be helped identified with the consulting team. So there may be things as we're going through this process that can help us learn what is possible and what is implementable and what is feasible. I think we'll also be asking them to help with some of those, are there opportunities to implement some of these? Are there funding things we should be looking at? And so some of that early implementation understanding will at least be included so that there can be future steps towards implementation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there other hands? I did see that there was a question on where the survey was posted, what website. It was noted on the slide. I did give the link, but it is marincounty.gov/Tam Junction. And on that page, you will find a link that goes to the study. Again, this presentation will be posted online, and so you will be able to see the links when that is posted. If there are not any other questions or hands, we've gone over, it is now 7:12, and I know that everyone has a busy evening. And then we will conclude this meeting. If there are any other questions and you think about it later, please feel free you can email me at tamjunction@marincounty.gov, and I will be able to respond.
Okay, with that, I want to thank everyone for attending. Thanks to our team for a great presentation, and please keep in touch and fill out the survey. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.